So we'll just get going, shall we? So really pleased to be able to talk with you today about apprenticeships. I'm Laura Roberts, and I'm the Regional Director for the North within Health Education England, and I'm really delighted to have some of my colleagues with me. So I have got, well, in fact, you can introduce yourselves. You've both got microphones.
Assuming it's working. Yeah, it sounds like it is. So I'm Candace Miller. I'm Executive Director at an organisation called Skills for Health. I'm also Director of the National Skills Academy for Health. We're a not-for-profit working alongside organisations like Health Education England to try and support employers to develop their workforce to be everything that they need to be.
My name is Roshane Kwaku-Price. I'm an IT trainer apprentice at Moorfields Eye Hospital. And yeah.
And Roshane is basically going to be the star of our presentation and tell us about his personal experiences of being an apprentice. But before you can listen to him, we want to tell you a little bit about the kind of journey of apprenticeships, really. So we've seen quite a lot of these slides of what was training like in the NHS 70 years ago. I briefly shared this after a couple of colleagues had been putting up pictures of themselves, and my colleague did ask, was that me on the far left in a previous... I've tried to pass it off as my mum, but I don't even think it's that. But I mean, it's that kind of reminder of and I think they're lovely pictures to kind of emphasise almost the lovely story that Ian came out with this morning in kind of what was in the job description of nurses. We've got, unfortunately, I need to stop because this isn't the right presentation. So we've got a slight problem. I don't know where people are. I'll have to keep going, but this isn't the one. This is an old version of it. So, what's training like now, 70 years on? We see a far more modern approach. We've also seen historically all of these professions recruited to from very much kind of basically from a vocational basis, but very much a difference between anything that ultimately becomes registered and those jobs which historically we've called the kind of unregistered, the bands 1 to 4. And we came up with a whole kind of whole group of activity around those staff, which we called Talent for Care. And we had a good strapline, which is about get in, get on, go further. And that really did emphasise how we wanted to see apprenticeships working in the future. I'll keep going with these slides because these aren't the right slides. So I'll pick up with this. So in terms of what's been achieved, I think I'll change the order around. We have seen just under 84,000 apprenticeship starts since the new apprenticeship changes happened from 2012. We've got 21 health-specific apprenticeship standards being delivered in the NHS, and that means that they are very much health-related, and there's a further 29 standards in development. Candace will explain more about them, but I think the important part is that they are the ones which only relate to the NHS, so they tend to be the more clinical areas. We also have another over 100 apprenticeship standards, which are actually just standards which would apply whether or not you worked in industry, if you worked in retail, so they would be, or any kind of manufacturing. So they might be about being a plumber or an electrician or some of those kind of roles. It might be about being a manager or a supervisor or a team leader. Some of those are seen as being able to not just be health specific, but can actually translate. I'll flick on for the slides and we can all await with bated breath and see what comes up next. I hope it's not my holiday pictures. So in terms of looking for the future, the ambition is around 100,000 apprenticeship starts to be achieved by 2020. We talk about there being the over the 70 health specific ones. They're the 50, the 21 which already exist, there's another 29, and then we have the opportunity for 20 which people are identifying as wanting to see happen, and we're exploring those with employers. And I think the important part about all of this was increasing accessibility for apprenticeships for everyone. And that's become a kind of big driver for us. I'm going to hand over to Candace. If in the meantime we get the kind of better slide set up, I'll make sure that they're distributed to everybody in the audience. But thank you. I'll hand over to you at this point, Candace.
Thanks, Laura. Thanks very much. So, as Laura said, there's a lot of work going on at the moment to develop apprenticeship standards that will work for the wide variety of roles that there are within health and care. And what I wanted to do in the next couple of slides is just share with you some of the journeys that are possible for individuals coming in at different starting points to take by picking up on those new apprenticeship standards to get into roles that they might previously have thought weren't accessible to them. So in the next 3 slides, what you're going to see is apprenticeship standards by name. Is that going to work? Nope, that's not going to work either. So where it says apprenticeship, that's the name of the standard. That's what's available. You're then going to see the level that it's set out. Then you're going to see the job title that it supports. And these are all live jobs from NHS Jobs website. And these are all apprenticeships that are available now with one exception, and it's in development and nearly finished, but not quite there. And I'm not going to tell you which one it is. We might have a guess later as to which it is. Have you got the full slides now?
Need the full slides, really, yeah.
Do we want to go back, Laura, or shall I carry on?
Just to pick up a few.
Do you want to do that then? Yeah. They say never work with children and animals. It maybe needs to be all technology.
So these are the right ones?
Yes, they're the right one. Yeah.
Where do you want to go from?
Just there, that's fine.
That
Okay, yeah, lovely. And then
Ta-da.
it's this onwards.
Yep.
Thank you. Okay, so take 2, as they say. So we have a government commitment to 1 million apprenticeships in total. We saw this year the apprenticeship of the new levy. And this gets talked about quite a lot in the press in terms of it is seen as a way that all employers can contribute to a central pot in order to then be accessed equally in order to increase the number of apprenticeships. It's a very large sum of money. For the NHS, it is £200 million a year, and that will be year on year, which is devoted to apprenticeships. Now, we could easily fill many, many hours of talking about the rules and the regulations and the process by which you access this money. Suffice to say, it's complicated, and employers have struggled this year, and that's impacted considerably on the number of apprenticeships. What's interesting is that compared to other industries, the NHS has actually done remarkably well. We have done better than, in a comparative way, we have managed to support more employers within the NHS to be able to access the levy and increase the number of apprenticeships, but it isn't as good as we would want it to be. We have done some research, and the very encouraging news is that over 94% of employers are saying that they have plans in order to spend the full amount, the totality of their levy within the next year to 2 year period. So again, it's needed some kind of adjustment, but it is a very positive picture going forward. There's a great deal of support from both HEE, from Skills for Health, from the DFE, from the Department for Education, from a whole raft of bodies to help Trust to increase both the quantity and the quality of apprenticeships. And I think a piece of work for which we're particularly proud is about HE commissioned the quality principles to establish what the gold standard for apprenticeships looks like. We did that work with Skills for Health, but it's really important to us because what we don't want is kind of them to be either a cheap or a substandard way of employing people. They need, I think, to be the best that they can possibly be and be worthy of the kind of NHS brand. So in terms of what's been achieved, you may have guessed we achieved over 83,000. The 21, the 29 and the 84 different types of apprenticeships which already exist within the NHS, and that's something that Candace will pick on. So in terms of the future, we need to ensure that by 2020 we have 100,000 apprenticeship starts. We've got over those 70 health-specific standards, and again, Candace will talk a little more about that. And I think the 2 points that I particularly would want to emphasise is that it is about accessibility. A number of times today, people have talked about the kind of the young people in the audience, and let's make sure that the younger people make a comment. One of my favourite stories is the oldest apprentice that I have met is 71 years old, and you know, he is really keen on his career, and he is really keen to keep working. And we've seen kind of whole spates of apprentices of all ages joining and being active within the NHS. And I think that it isn't just about being young, it's about kind of probably young of heart and wanting the passion to be able to take on a new role. The other point that I would really want to make is that it's about widening participation. We have really targeted doing work around getting work experience apprenticeships for people who really struggle to access employment. So we have some great programs working around people with learning disabilities. We've got some very specific things about physical disability, and we really are looking for innovative ways of working to make sure that underrepresented groups across the piece get an opportunity and access to apprenticeships. So all of our apprenticeships align with career pathways and T-levels, and seamlessly I will now hand over to Candace.
That one, thank you. Okay. So here we go. I'm going to show you 3 slides. They take different perspectives, so you can see that in this slide here, the first set pick up from within expectations about if you're a healthcare support worker, if you want to think about where does that possibly take you, and you have an interest in mental health services, then there is an opportunity, there is a career opportunity that's open to you there through the apprenticeship route, all the way up through to, and we put it in there, at level 6 on the qualifications framework levels, the degree level programme. So for many people, I think one of the challenges of education has been, and Laura's referred to widening participation, is that sometimes the opportunities aren't open to you at the start of a working career that might become an aspiration to you later on in life. And through the apprenticeship route, it's now entirely possible to go on through and to take a degree level programme within an apprenticeship where you're gaining and building on the experience that you have at work, as well as benefiting from that academic education and that exposure to wider bodies of knowledge that you might not have experienced simply within the job that you have. So you've got various opportunities there. What you've also got through an apprenticeship route now is the opportunity to take a sideways step. So if you are already, let's say, a degree level qualified physiotherapist, whether you came in through the physiotherapy apprenticeship or not, but actually you're going to start becoming one of those team leaders, one of those people in a leadership role with a management responsibility, there is an opportunity for you to go to a lower level academic grade type of qualification, but still through the apprenticeship route to pick up all the skills, the knowledge, the understanding that you need to be effective in that role and be recognised for that achievement, utilising that funding that Laura was referring to, the 200 million per year that the apprenticeship levy is taking from within the NHS. So these slides just pick up on a whole variety. Some are clinical, some are not. Some of, as you can see, are much more related to the estates, the facilities, the hospitality side of that totality of care that we provide within the NHS. And I think I wanted to just say a couple of other things about where these have come from, because I think sometimes education, people think about it being developed in hallowed halls by the great and the good. But apprenticeships and the apprenticeship standards are actually defined by employers. They're defined by the people sitting in this room. The work that we've been doing has been impossible without the over 550 individual representatives from employers across the NHS and wider healthcare services who have given their time and made clear their expectations as to the values, which we heard talk about in the last session, as to the skills, the competences, the knowledge, the abilities, the interactions, and crucially, what that role has to look like and be delivered like in the workplace, that mean that each of these apprenticeships is meaningfully capturing the essence of what a particular role or a particular type of role is doing within that wider healthcare arena. So again, all of these will be available on the slides, as has been said. We're going to be showing those afterwards. So they're all there, and you can have a good look at them. And these are, majority of these are developed by the healthcare groups. Some of them, as you can see, are not. So the customer service practitioner apprenticeship, the data analyst apprenticeship, payroll administrator, those are all developed by other bodies. But because all of the apprenticeship standards work to common expectations about what they have to capture, actually you can pick them up and you can use them, and even though they've been developed elsewhere, they have to take account of and think about the wider role and how that plays. Aside from that 550 plus individual members of the healthcare community who've been involved in developing these standards, over 300 representatives from other key stakeholder bodies like the Royal Colleges, like the professional bodies, have also contributed their time. And so for quite a number of the standards that have been generated, what there also is within them an expectation and some clarification about what they mean in terms of the link to registration for those roles that require registration. And they all say something about progression and where people might go once they've acquired the apprenticeship. You can capture and access all of this information through an online tool that Health Education England sponsors and which is available through the address that you can see there. What you can do within that tool is look at standards that are already there. You can get access to the standard. They're not more than 2 to 3 pages long, so they're really succinct. It takes a lot of time and effort, I can assure you, to edit down the plethora of information that comes in to capture that concisely, succinctly and clearly so that everybody looking at the apprenticeship and anyone teaching or assessing against that apprenticeship just knows exactly what it is the individual learner has to acquire and what the endpoint assessment organisations have to check has been achieved in order for that person to have achieved the apprenticeship. There's also newsletters, there's a whole variety of things that are located on that website. It's easy to access, and what it also has within it is, and where it's going to go next, is to incorporate some wider toolkits of resources about that whole apprenticeship journey. So for those of you maybe thinking about taking on an apprentice, as Laura has said already, it's very complicated. There's a lot of guidance out there, so we're going to incorporate a lot more of that within the website as it goes forward. So I want to do nothing more now than to hand you over to the star of this presentation. No pressure, Roshane, no pressure. I'll ask you to just welcome to the podium now Roshane Quaker-Price, who has just completed but hasn't quite got the certificate, his apprenticeship. So would you like to come up and tell us about your story, Roshane? Thank you.
Good afternoon, everyone. So yes, as they have said, I am an IT trainer apprentice at Moorfields Eye Hospital. To give a bit of background about myself, previous to my employment with Moorfields, I was an apprentice at HSBC as a data analyst. So I spent 2.5 years as an apprentice now. So what I can definitely say is that apprenticeships have got better and are definitely fit for purpose in terms of building people's careers. So it's been very good so far. In terms of why I chose an apprenticeship over doing the usual route into university, when I left school, I was like quite a lot of people where I didn't exactly know my career pathway, what exactly I wanted to do leaving school, and maybe committing the time up front to doing the university wasn't what I thought. So I understood that apprenticeships are a very good way to earn as you learn. So to build the experience in the workplace as well as working towards accredited qualification. Another reason why I did an apprenticeship is that they've moved away from, as we've said, being the cheap labour where you can dump responsibility on a young person, they don't really get too much out of it, to now working towards a competitively paid environment. So I was actually living in Sheffield on my own, in my own apartment, based off the income from my apprenticeship. And with that, also knowing that I was working towards my qualification. The qualification which I've just completed is the Level 3 Diploma in Learning and Development, and I'm hopefully receiving a certificate sometime soon just to get it all signed off. But it's been very enjoyable, and for those who don't understand what actually goes on during an apprenticeship, it's mainly an 80 to 20% split between your day-to-day role, which in my case is the training of individuals, and then the 20% going towards your qualification-based learning, which can be at where you work or attending the college sessions. In terms of the skills and aspirations that I've got at the moment, of course, there's the detailed role-specific ones from my IT trainer role, but I think the main important ones which are underlooked sometimes is the transferable skills, which I picked up from the workplace. So things which I can move across roles or even take up as I progress throughout my career. And another point which they wanted me to answer was, why did I choose to work in the NHS? And for me, one of the biggest points that I've understood with the NHS is that as staff, there is a good understanding of our bigger picture, in the sense that we're all here, regardless of our role, trying to work towards improving the lives for our patients and taking care of them. And another reason that I'm here with the NHS is mainly about me being a people person. So everyone has always said to me, you are such a people person, the NHS is perfect for you to be, so make sure you do so. And finally, to wrap up, I don't know why these guys gave me so much pressure. I only had a tiny little speech to prepare for you guys. But finally, to wrap up, if anyone's in this room considering doing an apprenticeship, I would definitely say please consider it strongly. It is a good opportunity to develop your career. I'm standing here in front of you today. I don't think I would have thought I would be doing this a few years ago prior to doing an apprenticeship. So you will be given opportunities, you will be supported and trusted, provided that you can perform. So as cliche as it sounds, get in and go far. Thank you very much.
I'm happy to take some questions.
Questions, yeah.
I'll just get my iPad out. So, any questions from the audience?
With the kind of apprenticeships open up to any age group now, I understand at the minute it's now the first year of your apprenticeship is £3.50 an hour. That's your like max wage that you can get. Is that going to change? So say if like a 50-year-old wants to do an apprenticeship, are they capped at that wage as well?
Yes, say a bit about the wage bit, because I think if it's the general issue, apprenticeships can be paid at a number of different levels. So it is absolutely the case that many employers pay. Could you go backwards on the slides? If we just go back to say some of the ones here, if you just leave something like that up. When you talk about some of those levels and the different grades, then people can be paid at the same rate as they would be. You know, so if you're an apprentice and you're eventually going to become what would be a band 6 job or a band 5 job, no, you won't get a band 5 or 6. There will be a reduction because you're in training, but you certainly don't get paid the minimum wage. You don't get paid for those who know, Appendix U.
Yes.
There's an appendix to Agenda
Yep.
for Change which details the kind of levels which can be paid. You are paid a reasonable rate for the job, and the clarity of once you get that apprenticeship and you complete the apprenticeship, once that happens, you go through endpoint assessment, you get the apprenticeship, then you would be paid at the full rate for the job.
Yeah, so I think one of the things that's been, a lot of misconceptions are out there about what an apprenticeship is. An apprenticeship is a job. You are doing training while you're doing a job. Now, if you're training for a job that you are perhaps close to actually fulfilling the totality of, then I would challenge any employer to make sure that you are paid an effective rate for that job. If you are taking forward an apprenticeship with an aspiration to move on into new roles and to progress in your career, then like any other learning context, you don't normally get paid at the level you end up at while you're in training. So you would be paid at a lower rate. I think one of the other things that's worth saying is that there are some minimum payment levels for not just for everybody, but also in relation to apprentices, and those are different at different ages and so on, all sorts of complexity in that. But one of the things that we've certainly found over the years working more in some of the areas of the country where there's a lot of new staff coming in on apprenticeship programs, that NHS trusts and other providers within the healthcare system are waking up to the fact that if they want the very best people to come in, they will be paying a premium for that, and they need to acknowledge that, because what they're then doing is they're bringing in the talent that they will take forward into the future. Yeah.
The guy at the back.
Oh yeah, thanks for an interesting glimpse into the apprenticeship system. There was a lot of focus on how many people are starting apprenticeships, but you didn't mention much about how many people are completing them. I'm just wondering whether we have that data and what factors you think are affecting people's completion, and whether we've got more people completing or fewer people completing as time goes by.
Absolutely, it's well observed. It was one of the, I think, the kind of slips that went into the original kind of how do you count them. So you counted starts, not necessarily finishes. And that definitely, because we work with the Department for Education who oversees apprenticeships, within the NHS we have a very high completion rate. From memory, and I can happily check this, I have it as about 96%.
It's close to that, which is higher than national average.
Absolutely. So we, for that reason, and for the same reason that Candace said, it's the notion that it's a job, and that either those jobs are held as they will be apprenticeships, and each time they will be filled by an apprentice, or it's the notion that employers recognise that you have qualified in this and they've got vacancies that you can move into. So I do think that the NHS does well in terms of completions.
We're probably ought to stop.
Yeah, finished.
Yeah.
Sorry, we have to stop now, but there is question and answer session now, and I am on the panel, so hold your question for as long as it's not secretly for fruition. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
so much.